she serves the Panola district, and the nation is divided into different districts, and people like I am who don't live in, we're citizens at large, we get to choose which one we vote in. Unfortunately, I chose Pickens. About 40 years ago, if I'd known Beth, I would have chosen Panola.
We love you anyway.
Thank you. And she is actually, her district is actually the closest one to Garland, which we take great delight in. I want you to introduce yourself and say a few things.
Chukma Beth Alexander, Chickasaw Saya. Hello, my name is Beth Alexander and I am Chickasaw. I am a tribal legislator. I never grew up thinking that one day I'll be a legislator. God has a way of doing things, and this is a God thing. So I am a school teacher by trade. I still keep my teaching certificates for Oklahoma and Texas current, like I'm going to run in that classroom tomorrow. But it's been a few years, but that's what I did. But however, I have been a legislator. I'm finishing up on my 27th year. It's been a very interesting job. It's been a blessing. The neatest part of the job is getting to meet citizens. I don't mind whatever district you're in. It's the fact you're a citizen and you have a story to tell, and it's just fun to get to chat and interact. So if I'm wandering around here and you say something, I want to say hello. There are 4 districts in the Chickasaw Nation. Now, most of us wander around and never know what we're in because you just, doesn't mean much to you. I understand that. You really have to get immersed in it to get there. My district at this time is the smallest one by land mass and by population. It has 1 representative. Ta-da! Here I am. Yay! Of course, Pickens and Pontotoc has the most in it because the headquarters is there. So you have a lot of folks working, and it's the biggest one. They have 5 reps. Pickens is the largest in land mass because they had to do that way back then to get the head count they needed. They had to lope in all that land. And they have 4 representatives. In Pickens would be like Ardmore, Oklahoma. Y'all ever heard of Ardmore? Yeah, there you go. And then you have, we talked about Pontotoc, and we did Pickens, and then we have Tishomingo District. The town of Tishomingo, the capital, is there, and has 3 representatives. So all total, there are 13 legislators. And that's according to the Constitution. We didn't come up with that on our own. I mean, we're following some directions on that one. But thank you for letting me come today and speak with you and just get to see you, and I look forward to get to chat with you later. Chipisa Lecho.
I'm going to introduce the dancers who called us last night about 10 o'clock to say the weather was too bad to come, and so we were very disappointed they're not here, but maybe next time. We would hope next time. Well, I want to introduce our speaker, the next speaker. His name is Joe Thomas, and as I said earlier today, we have a city council member named Joe Thomas, but this is not that Joe Thomas. And Joe is from Chickasaw Nation. He is an executive officer in the Literary Arts Division of the Chickasaw Nation. And I wish I had 30 minutes to go over the history of the revival of the nation, how it grew from basically having to meet in a church about 50 years ago, just to hold the tribe together, and now today is an incredible organization. So much of it is a result of Governor Anatoly and his incredibly brilliant leadership. But we've got departments that do everything coming and going. Arts, humanities, take care of our people. The tribe does an incredible job. So Joe is an executive officer, and he's over such areas as genealogy, creative arts, and the Tribal Library. He holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Oklahoma in American Indian Native American Studies and a master's degree from Southeastern Oklahoma State in Native American Leadership, where he graduated summa cum laude. He's a very smart individual. The first time I heard him speak, we have a North Texas Chickasaw Council that meets monthly, basically. And I leaned over to Kay and said, we have got to get him to come to our annual meeting and be a speaker. So, Joe, come on up here. We're just delighted that you're here. And the other Joe, you can stand up to the little flag here. Oh, okay. You ready to go? I think I got your papers mixed up with mine. How would that possibly happen? Okay, there it is. I kept thinking, Kay certainly didn't write my script that way.
Thank you, Louis. Chokma. I'm very excited to be here. Sahok Chafoa, Joe Thomas, as they said, and I serve as the Executive Officer for the Chickasaw Nation Literary Arts Division. And Garland, Texas is a very beautiful city. My goodness. This is my first time to Garland. And Chantella and I, we popped in the car to eat our sandwich real quick, and we're people watchers, and we're watching people walk back and forth. And it seemed like everyone that was walking by had a smile on their face, and I love to see that. You know, I don't know if they heard that Joe Thomas was going to be in town or the Chickasaw Nation, but either way, I just love to see a smile. So thank you for that smile, and hopefully you keep that smile on your face as I'm presenting today. So just a little backstory about kind of how or why I'm up here. Well, first of all, I was approved to speak by the Chickasaw Nation. I was approved, everyone, okay? But secondly, Miss Kay and Louis here, I got to meet them roughly 2 years ago. So this has been roughly 2 years in the making. And I can't believe it's finally here. It seems as though Kay would email me probably every 3 months and say, Joe, don't forget about us, don't forget about us. And I say, I won't. And then next thing you know, we're at the week of, and I'm like, ooh, I better get that presentation together. No, I'm just kidding. But it was such a delight to meet them. And the Chickasaw Connection group that's down in Dallas, I've seen a lot of familiar faces from that group. So if you are Chickasaw or have Chickasaw family, could you please stand so I can see you? And the crowd can see you? Nice. Let's give them a round of applause. Awesome. Well, the Chickasaws made it to Texas. And in my presentation, we'll talk, I'm going to talk about a variety of things. But Chickasaws, this isn't our first time in Texas. We go back into the 1800s when Chickasaws were coming over here for a variety of reasons, and we'll talk about that. But today we're here to really, obviously for Kay and Louis, we're here to promote and share our story and really just celebrate and what it means to be Chickasaw and share it with Garland. So again, I'm just very excited to be here. So Kay mentioned that she wanted me to speak on a variety of things. And luckily for me, I get asked often to go and talk about a variety of things. So I really enjoy what I get to do. So today I'm going to be talking about a little bit of everything, if you will. Let's make sure this clicker works.
Turn it on.
Oh, let me turn it on real quick. There we go. Thank you. There we go. Okay, so today's presentation, obviously we're going to be talking about the Chickasaw Nation. But specifically, we're going to be talking about who is the Chickasaw Nation? Who are the Chickasaw people? Then we're going to go into the story of Chickasaw removal. If you were able to see the movie Teata, that movie really summed up a lot of what my presentation will share today. It's talking about the Chickasaw people, Chickasaw adaptability, Chickasaw resilience. So we're going to talk about Chickasaw removal in that dark period, not only in Chickasaw history, but American history. We'll also talk about the two influential figures, Teata, and then also Montford Johnson. He was a famous Chickasaw rancher there in Indian Territory up into Oklahoma. Next, we'll segue into our Chickasaw student curriculum. So Ms. Beth Alexander, you say you're a former teacher and you still hold your certification, so I might need to hand you one of our lesson plans to see if you can. But we're going to talk a little bit about our student curriculum that the Chickasaw Nation is creating so that we can ensure that our lessons are being taught in our classrooms for not only Chickasaw students, but other First American and non-First American students, because Chickasaw history is world history. And lastly, we're going to talk about the Chickasaw Heritage Center that is being created in Tupelo, Mississippi. And I think that really is a great way to really end the presentation because it really brings things back together. One of the great things that that really stood out to me in the movie Teata is Teata's father. If you remember him laying on the bed, he said, Chickasaws are still here and they're thriving. And I think that is a great way to kind of put what the Chickasaw Nation is doing in Mississippi and really going back home and showing that the Chickasaws, once again, are still here and we are thriving. So, does all of that sound okay with you guys?
Yes.
All right. Well, again, thank you again for the opportunity to share this information. All right. So, obviously, I serve as the executive officer for the Chickasaw Nation, and every now and then some people will say, well, what is the Chickasaw Nation? Is it a government? Is it a museum? Is it a people? Is it a person? Well, in a way, it's kind of all those things, because the Chickasaw Nation is a tribal government, which is overseen by Chickasaw people, Chickasaw leaders, serving the Chickasaw people, serving and enhancing programs and services that contribute back into Chickasaw communities. So it really is kind of all of those things. But in essence, though, the Chickasaw Nation is a First American tribe. And there are more than 565 plus federally recognized tribes in the United States. And there's also 39 tribes in Oklahoma. So out of all those 565 plus and then 39 in Oklahoma, we are one of those that is located in Oklahoma, with their headquarters being in Ada, Oklahoma, and as the film mentioned, as Lewis mentioned, as Beth mentioned, our capital is located in Tishomingo, Oklahoma. So prior to us being in Oklahoma, our ancestors were from the southeastern parts of the United States, which consisted of parts of present-day states, Mississippi, Alabama, Kentucky, and Tennessee. There, our people thrived. We lived on the land. We grew the things that we needed to sustain our people. We hunted, we fished, we traversed the trails and the natural waterways throughout the Southeast to once again provide for our people. We established businesses, we had schools, we worked with missionaries, we allowed missionaries to come into our homeland to provide a form of education for our people, because our early leaders knew that it was important for our people to have a form of Western education in order to be able to compete with our counterparts. And we see that from our homelands in Mississippi and other homeland areas all the way through Indian Territory and even today. Education is very vital and important for the Chickasaw Nation, for the Chickasaw people. So there in our homeland, in the southeast, and there you can see on the map, the bottom right map, the red on the right side, that is our historic homeland. Beginning in 1837, however, our Chickasaw people were forcefully removed from the homeland into Indian Territory, and that was part of the dark period that we know of called Chickasaw removal. Oftentimes, that dark period of time is referred to as a Trail of Tears. But if you may recall from high school or from your own study, that there were more than there were 5 tribes who were removed from the Southeast. And each one of those tribes have their own removal stories, their own routes that they took. So instead of, our standpoint on it is, instead of grouping all of those, the resilience, the stories, the travels, instead of grouping that all together, we like to identify that each tribe has their own removal and the journey and survival. So for us, we refer to it as Chickasaw removal. But it's oftentimes referred to as the Trail of Tears. But in 1837, that is when we first started being removed from our homeland. And that continued all the way up into roughly the 1890s. But again, we're going to get into that in much greater detail a little bit later. Despite removal, though, our Chickasaw people arrived into Indian Territory and they really just began to rebuild. We worked to rebuild our homes, our communities, our schools, churches, pretty much everything in order for our people to once again rise up and continue to operate. We brought our government or our governmental system with us. We brought our language, our traditions, our foods, all of that from our homeland into Indian Territory. So for today, the Chickasaw Nation operates very much like any other federal government. We have a governor, which is Governor Anatubby. We have a lieutenant governor, which is Chris Anatubby. And we have a cabinet secretaries, we have tribal legislators, we have a judicial department, an executive department, all designed to create programs and services and opportunities for our Chickasaw people to, once again, not only compete with our counterparts, but also to just continue to promote and maintain what it means to be Chickasaw. So the Chickasaw Nation is doing some amazing things. Lewis mentioned that there was a revival that occurred, and Lewis is right. So Lewis, you've done your study on Chickasaw history, and it's very impressive. So that period of time was known as the grassroots movement. And what that movement was is, if you remember from Tejada, there was the Code of Indian Offenses. So there was a lot of negative things that were being imposed upon the Chickasaw Nation from the federal government to outlaw or not provide opportunities for us, for our people, to promote and take part in what it means to be Chickasaw. So that group, the grassroots movement, they actively work to come together in those churches such as Sealy Chapel and other small churches in our Chickasaw communities to talk politics, to talk culture, to talk family, to ensure that that Chickasaw identity didn't go away. And also to ensure that there was a voice within the Chickasaw Nation that could be heard, to ensure that things would be restored. And they would go on to be restored. If you remember from the Tejada film, at the very last scene, it said that in 1971, Chickasaws would once again be able to elect our own leader. And that's correct. In 1971, Mr. Overton James was elected as leader. So I'm going to do my best not to get all over the place, but Chickasaw history is so fascinating to me, and it really is something to be proud of. For Chickasaws, it's something to be proud of. When I talk about resilience, persistence, determination, it's all of those things. And hopefully I don't talk too fast for you guys or kind of be all over the place, because I'm excited to be here, but also I'm always excited to share this history. So I'm going to try to get back to my talking points. Okay, so as I mentioned, Governor Anatubby, he leads our nation. He's been our governor since 1987. So he is a man like no other. He truly is. Think about unconquered and unconquerable, a leader. He is the epitome of that. So we're grateful that he still is leading the great nation of the Chickasaw Nation. We employ more than 15,000 people. We operate more than 100 businesses, and we have over 80,000 citizens worldwide. Some statistics here. When Chickasaw people were removed to Indian Territory, it was reported that there were roughly 5,000 Chickasaws, and that was around 1850. So in 1850 to 2026, we now see that there's close to 80 or more than 80,000 citizens. So we're still going strong, y'all. We're still going strong. All right, so now we're going to transition over into Chickasaw removal. So as I mentioned, Chickasaw removal is a dark period of time for the Chickasaw people, but for American history, because it really, it touches on a wide variety of different legislation, different times, different perspectives that really goes back into American history. So when we talk about this period of time, it's not just Chickasaw history, it's American history. So even as our leaders and our people, we had businesses, we had communities, we had schools, we were thriving and flourishing in our homeland, there still was this reason or decision that the Chickasaws and other tribes in the Southeast should not be there. And so we're going to talk about some of the reasons why it was decided that Chickasaws should not be in the home that they've been living since time immemorial. But in order to do that, we have to start and kind of go back to really around 1786, but even a little bit before that, and talk a little bit about Chickasaw leader Piamico. So Chickasaw leader Piamico was born around 1750 in our historic homeland, but present-day Mississippi. And he was a Chickasaw leader who was really adamant about protecting Chickasaw people, Chickasaw sovereignty, and Chickasaw interest. And we really start to see him really move up and rise into his own leadership status during 1775 to 1783 during the Revolutionary War. So this was during a time, when there were 13 colonies and they were battling it out with the British nation, and really just trying to, the 13 colonies in British, they were trying to, lay claim to North America. And so it was Piamico who really had that foresight and that vision to go ahead and begin to align with those 13 colonies that would become the United States. So around 1786, or not around, in 1786, Chickasaw leader Piamico, he signed a treaty with the United States. And this is known as the Treaty with the U.S. and Chickasaw of 1786, also known as the Treaty of Hopewell. And this treaty established three main objectives that really were pivotal to the Chickasaw Nation and also to the United States. The first one is that, and I'm going to come back, is that it marked the beginning of official relations between the Chickasaw Nation and the United States. So we have to kind of put ourselves in this time frame of 1786. This was a long time ago. You had different ideas, you had different perspectives on race and leadership and all those things. But you have a Chickasaw leader who's from Mississippi who was able to establish a really good close connection and friendship with the President of the United States. So that was something that was very uncommon during that time, because perspectives towards Americans were not of the most positive or the most brightest of things. So it's really important that we really identify what Piamico really brought to the table as it relates to leadership, to connections, to collaborations. And so because of all of that, we see this treaty being signed. So the first one is that it, again, marked the beginning of official relations. But then the second one, it established the official name for the Chickasaw Nation. And the official name of the Chickasaw Nation is the Chickasaw Nation. And which I think is pretty, I want to say ironic or coincidental, but the is in the name, the Chickasaw Nation. And so to me, there's only one, the Chickasaw Nation. And if we look at other tribes throughout the United States, we see multiple tribes. So we have the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, and then we have the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians. So you see that once upon a time there was a group of people, and later on, for whatever reasons, you have a split, and now you have two separate tribes, but they all come from the same group. But with the Chickasaw Nation, there's only one tribe, the Chickasaw Nation. And I think that is something to be proud of. Next is that this treaty acknowledged the Chickasaw Nation as a sovereign political nation. Now, I know what you may be thinking is, Joe, did that treaty, or is it important for us to have that acknowledgement because we already know that we're a sovereign political entity? Well, yes, it is very important because that really set the tone for the other leaders that followed President Washington. He died in 1799, but that treaty, that acknowledgement really paves the way and really sets the foundation for other leaders realizing and understanding that this in fact is a sovereign nation that is being acknowledged by the United States government. Now, prior to that, does that mean that we weren't sovereign? Well, Absolutely not. We have always been a sovereign nation since time immemorial. However, again, this treaty really just helps pave the way for us to, again, to continue to assert our sovereignty and promote our sovereignty as well. We're having some difficulties here, but that's okay. I'm Chickasaw. I'm resilient. I do want to go back real quick because I did gloss over something. So Pete Miko, he established really good connection with George Washington, and he often visited him at his personal home in Mount Vernon. So you see a Chickasaw leader traveling from Mississippi over into the East Coast, and that is, again, is something to be proud of and something that really, it really just shows the determination that a Chickasaw person would go to protect his people, protect the interests, and really just promote the Chickasaw Nation as well. So one of the final things that the treaty did is that it marked American recognition of the boundaries of the Chickasaw Nation. So as I said, our homeland boundaries are there in the Southeast, Mississippi, Alabama, Kentucky, and Tennessee. But this treaty is very important for a variety of reasons, as I mentioned, but this treaty acknowledged that this is in fact the land of the Chickasaw people. So for a president for the United States to acknowledge that was groundbreaking. And it really goes to show how much influence Pimiko had in asserting Chickasaw identity, Chickasaw land base, but also really showing that true connection that he had with the president and the respect that they both shared with each other. So here on the map, that is our traditional homeland boundaries that is acknowledged and recognized in the 1786 treaty. Something very, very just amazing that we can always look back to. Unfortunately though, in 1799, both Pimiko and George Washington would go on and would pass away. And from here, we really start to see a shift of American leaders and their viewpoints or their perspectives or perceptions on Chickasaw leaders, but also tribal leaders. And this is where we really start to see kind of a pattern of where things start to go very negatively for tribal people that are living specifically in the North American Southeast during this time. So 1799, they pass away, and roughly 4 years later, we see that the territory, the Louisiana Purchase, or the Louisiana Territory, or the Louisiana Purchase, it encompasses parts of our Chickasaw homeland. So from that purchase, we really start to see travelers and explorers being sent out into this area to really, obviously, are there any map makers in the room, cartographers, geographers? Okay, well, they were being sent out into the Southeast to really explore, look, what are the resources out there? What are some of the natural resources out there that are really sustaining these tribes? How are they living and thriving in this land? So these explorers are being sent out, and so they are learning, they're charting, they're mapping out the many different resources throughout the Southeast. So these people are going into Chickasaw territory, Choctaw territory, and other tribal areas, and really seeing the landscape, seeing the resources that our tribal people or Chickasaw people have access to. And unfortunately, this is where we really start to see greed and jealousy and envy start to take place. But it's really just being noticed at this time. No one's really taking action just yet, but we're going to start to see some action take place that negatively impacts Chickasaws and other Southeastern Indians. So we have these travelers, these explorers being sent out. You guys familiar with the Lewis and Clark expedition? Okay, so this is where we start to see where I see Chickasaw history as world history. Well, we see those connections there because those two explorers, those famous explorers, are also going into Chickasaw territory. So they are reporting back to DC and the East Coast and really sharing what all the tribes have access to. And again, this is where we start to see perspectives towards First Americans start to greatly change. And again, this is all leading up to Chickasaw removal beginning in 1837. But before we get to 1837, we're still climbing. So 1803, you have the Louisiana Purchase. So we're still kind of making our way up into the 1830s. But before things start to really have a drastic negative impact on Chickasaw people, our people are still living and thriving. We're still operating our businesses. We're still working with missionaries in our homeland. We still have Chickasaw families having their businesses, and one of their businesses were Chickasaw stands, and they're also known as Chickasaw inns. So think about something similar to like an old Airbnb, bed and breakfast. But I guess you could say kind of Airbnb, but more of like a bed and breakfast. So these Chickasaw stands or inns, they were homes of Chickasaw people. And so they're opening up their homes for these travelers to come through and provide them an opportunity for them to rest, to relax, to stay the night, and to also gather some additional supplies so that they can continue on their journey. So, let's take a moment here to stop and kind of put ourselves in the seats of Chickasaws during this time. So you have a lot of travelers coming through the area, and instead of saying, get off my property, or I don't want you here, what did they do? They took advantage of opportunity because they weren't going to necessarily stop them from coming into the area, because there was a lot of them that were coming in waves during this time exploring. But what they did is they took advantage of an opportunity, and they were able to make a profit out of it. So these stands were a way, a business adventure for our Chickasaw people to make some money. And, kind of jumping ahead a little bit, we see that entrepreneurship, that business mind, we still see that very evident within the Chickasaw Nation today, with over more than 100 businesses, different things that really generate revenue to put it back into programs and services for Chickasaw people. So it's nothing, what we're doing now is nothing new. So let's go back to the 18 teens. So these stands, they were providing hospitality, they were providing resources, they were providing food. So this was something that was very prominent during this time. And it was reported that there was a stand or an inn about every 5 miles along the Natchez Trace Parkway. So beginning in Natchez, Mississippi to Nashville, Tennessee. And it's about a 444 stretch of road nowadays, paved stretch of road, but back then, it was a trail. But there was a stand or an inn every 5 miles. So that's, that goes to show that Chickasaws took advantage once again of the opportunity of these travelers. And when I say take advantage of opportunity, I'm not saying taking advantage of it in a negative way, but again, generating profits so that they can provide for their people. So these stands or inns, we start to see them pop up again later, and about 5 to 10 years later, but now they're being operated by non-Chickasaws, by non-tribal people. So you have these explorers, you also have the federal government starting to set up stands throughout the Southeast, and this is now taking away opportunities for Chickasaws to provide for their people. So it's a Chickasaw idea that was kind of taken from them. So as unwanted traffic flowed into Chickasaw territory, non-First Americans began establishing new towns and roads and stands on lands that were occupied by Chickasaw families. So remember in 1799, I said that perspectives and perceptions were changing. Well, now we really start to see it take effect. And this is around 1805 to 1810. So we have a lot of travelers coming through. So nextly, we have some other things that began to negatively impact the Chickasaw people. And some of these things are the Manifest Destiny, as well as the Indian Removal Act. So when talking about Manifest Destiny, maybe sometimes in your history books or elementary books, you may find that the Manifest Destiny was promoted to encourage people to go chase your dreams, to go explore West, provide for your family. But I think what the other side of that coin is that as these folks are traveling out west, they are impacting the people that are already there. When I say impacting, I mean stealing their land, taking their crops, doing damage to other people. So oftentimes this idea of manifest destiny is not something positive. And when we're talking about the Chickasaw history, that definitely was the case. So manifest destiny was used to justify westward expansion of American settlers. Expansion of these settlers onto occupied land and into occupied homes of Chickasaws and other First Americans. So let me repeat that. So you had non-native people going out with this philosophy of manifest destiny, but they're going into the homes of our Chickasaw ancestors saying, this is now my home, this is part of my destiny. And so they're taking our homes, they're pillaging our people, they're doing a lot of bad things to our Chickasaw people on this philosophy of manifest destiny. Additionally, there were various incidents that guided the direction of the forced removal. So we haven't gotten to 1830 Indian Removal Act just yet. So there's a lot of things that continue to lead up to removal. So we have manifest destiny, but we also have our tribal leaders, particularly Tishomingo, who was jailed there in Mississippi for asserting our tribal sovereignty on our land against a non-tribal member who came in and who was trying to sell whiskey. And what did the state of Mississippi do? Well, instead of them saying, you're doing the right thing, you're right, this is your land, you have the right to protect and oversee it as you see fit, what they do, they sided with the non-tribal member and said that the Chickasaws have no right to do that to this individual. So they jailed Tishomingo. So there we have a clear violation of tribal sovereignty, Chickasaw sovereignty. And so that is a prime example of how Chickasaw government, Chickasaw leadership, Chickasaw sovereignty is not being respected no longer in our homeland, which predates the establishment of Mississippi as a state. So with this disrespect, with this complete overlook, we really start to see just, again, a lot of negative things starting to take hold. Next, we have a lot of different land cessions that now start to strip our land away from us. So again, our homeland is in parts of present-day Mississippi, Alabama, Kentucky, and Tennessee. I can go to a map again. Okay, so this area, it's over 1 million acres of land. So beginning in 1801, we start to see our land being stripped from us. So land cessions were forced on the Chickasaw people, including the Treaty of 1801, which ceded land in Tennessee for the creation of the Natchez Trace Parkway route. So in 1801, that's our first land cession. Then in 1805, there's another land cession. In 1816, there's another land cession. In 1818, there's another land cession. And then 1832 is our final land cession. So all from 1801 all the way to 1832, we just have time and time again this land being stripped from the Chickasaw people. And what is that ultimately? What do you guys think why are they doing that? To get them out the way. Ultimately, the federal government and non-tribal people, they just saw Chickasaws and other tribal people as a nuisance to this area. They also saw them as having access to resources that they shouldn't have access to. They're kind of going back to that envy, to that jealousy, that these are uncivilized people who should not be here, and they need to go. So from 1801 all the way to 1832, the government took action to ensure that the Chickasaws and other southeastern Indians would no longer be here.
So Joe,
Yes.
you showed on there a minute ago about the Louisiana Purchase. What year was that again?
1803.
Okay, so get in order. So had we been moved yet when they did the Louisiana Purchase? Or
No.
we're still living and doing our own thing?
We're still doing our own thing. So again, the federal government forced us to cede land in 1801. So we were having to cede land even before that area was purchased by the government. Yes.
We're allowed to ask questions.
Yes.
I'm just curious, what was the role of the church back during that 1801, 1830?
Yes. So the role of the church, it was primarily in missionary schools. So they were sent out to provide a form of Christianity to help provide some civilization for these native people. But for the Chickasaw Nation, it was our sovereign right to either allow them in or to not allow them in. So what we did is majority of our communities went ahead and our tribal leaders allowed them into our communities. And that's where we start to see Chickasaw boarding schools such as Talkshish, Monroe Mission. There's several other missionary boarding schools in the Southeast that our Chickasaws attended. Okay, and so as I mentioned, great questions, by the way. So if you guys have any questions, hopefully I'm staying on track and not taking too much time, but if there's other questions, raise your hand. Again, in 1832, that was our last land cession, and that ceded all remaining lands in our homeland. And then we didn't have anything. So in 1832, we ceded everything. And so we were just kind of, I don't want to say sitting ducks, but we were just there and didn't have any land. And so our leaders had to make a decision. So as that's waiting to come on up. So our leaders had to really make some very important decisions. They couldn't just sit around and wait, because during this time, our land was being ceded and Europeans were coming in and they were taking our homes, they were pillaging our homes, they were being very destructive to Chickasaw people. So let me go back one. So what our leaders did during this time, and it's very, it really just goes to show the vision and the dedication that they have to protecting our people. So what they did is there was many groups of Chickasaw leaders who traveled out west in search of land, because they knew at this point that, because by 1832, the Indian Removal Act had already been passed. Did I skip that one? Okay, yes, I did. Okay, let me go back. Okay, so the 1830, the Indian Removal Act was passed, and this granted President Jackson authority and funds to remove the Chickasaw and other members of the 5 tribes out west. So they were going to move them. However, Chickasaws didn't remove until 1837. So in 1832, that's where we see that our tribal leaders ceded all the remaining lands. So from 1832 to 1837, 5 years, our Chickasaw leaders strategically worked with the federal government saying, give us time, we need more time so that we can find suitable land for our Chickasaw people out west. And so this was creating opportunities for our people to better prepare for this removal journey, because in 1830, there were already tribes being forcefully removed out, and there were some tribes who didn't even have time to properly prepare. They may have been told the day before saying, you gotta go, so they could only pack up what they could and forced out. So for 5 years, our people were able to delay removal to have a better opportunity to prepare for this journey ahead. So between 1832 and 1837, our Chickasaw people, our leaders, were coming out into Indian Territory and parts of Texas here to look for suitable land. And so what they were looking for was land that reminded them of home, because they didn't want to just move their people to areas that was foreign, or, obviously it would be foreign, but areas that didn't look anything like their homeland. So they were looking for natural running streams, rivers, rolling hills, bluffs, things of that nature. So they came down to parts of Texas, and they would report back to the federal government and saying, no, we are not finding anything. There's nothing that reminds us of our home. There's nothing suitable. Because again, these are times obviously before Walmart, before any major store. So we still relied on the land for growing crops, hunting, fishing. So they needed these resources to be able to provide for their people. And our leaders were not going to just just blindly say, okay, we'll remove them, and then where do we go? So leaders continue to scope out areas.
Joe,
Yes.
is there any validity to the story that one of the sites was this in Paris, Texas, Cooper, that whole East Texas area? But it was Texas was Teja. It was independent, and Jackson did not want us to leave the country.
Okay, I'm not quite sure on that one. I'd have to do some more research on that. Yes. So, again, 1832, 1837. Oh, yes. Yes, so great question. So she's asking, in 1837, how did we purchase an interest in land and resources from the Choctaw Nation for $530,000? Well, the reason why is because in 1832, our Chickasaw people were forced to cede that land, but when they ceded that land, they were able to sell that land. So by 1832 and 1837, we had Chickasaw people. There was the allotment period that occurred in Indian Territory, Oklahoma, but there was kind of a similar allotment process that occurred in Mississippi with those lands that our Chickasaw people were that lived. So by the time that 1832 rolled around, we ceded all that land. That land was able to be sold for the interest of those people. So that's why we were able to purchase that land. So in 1837, when our Chickasaw people left, there was a lot of wealthy Chickasaws because they were able to sell the land and take those resources with them. So that 5 years that our Chickasaw people were able to delay and negotiate, that allowed our people and our ancestors the opportunity to, again, purchase the land from the Choctaw Nation, but also be able to get all of our people here. So removal began in 1837, and it was reported that majority of the removal was over by 1839, with other Chickasaw families and groups going up until 1850 and even 1890s. So there's that little bit tidbit information there. Let me see where I'm at here. Okay, so in 1837, our Chickasaw people were finally able to find land that they felt as though it was the right fit. So we purchased it from the Choctaws. And you may ask, why the Choctaws? Why not the Cherokee? Why not the Seminole? Well, it's because, again, if you remember from the movie Teyada, it says that there was two brothers, Chickasaw and Choctaw. And so there's that historical connection that the two tribes have, and that connection still continues to this day. So the two lived geographically close to each other, very similar in culture and of languages. So I don't want to say it was a given, but it was very fitting for the two to have this cooperation, this agreement, because I know that both tribes had wanted to see the better outcome for each other. And I really think that is what happened. So in 1837, the Chickasaws purchased an interest in land and resources from the Choctaw Nation. So in 1837, that is where we start to see this period of removal. And ironically, the first group of Chickasaw people were removed on July 4th, 1837. So as other people were celebrating Independence Day and celebrating freedom and independence and identity, you have a group of people who are being forcibly removed from their homeland, having to leave behind their buried ancestors, having to leave behind their businesses, their schools. You have kids who are no longer going to see their friends anymore. Because during this time, you have Chickasaws and non-native people who either go to school together with these missionary schools, or they, there's some type of business that they work together on. So, it's naturally understood that you're going to have Chickasaw kids who are no longer going to see not only fellow Chickasaw friends and cousins, but non-native cousins as well. So it's a sad time in some of the most heaviest of ways and some of the most lightest of ways. So one of the most painful experiences occurred on July 4th, 1837. That first group of Chickasaws, they were ferried across the Mississippi River and offloaded on the eastern bank of Arkansas, and this initiated a long removal toward Indian Territory. Chickasaws, they took almost everything that they had with them. So again, they were able to, for one way or the other, because of that delayed removal for that 5-year window. Our ancestors had heard the stories of other tribes who were forced to leave by U.S. officials for Indian Territory with barely any supplies and arrived without any tools, food, clothing, blankets, etc. in the harshest of conditions. So because of these stories that they're hearing and the land that they were able to sell and the money that they had in their pockets or in their possession, Chickasaws along the way bought a lot of supplies. I can't paint the picture of all Chickasaws because there's different groups of Chickasaws who were removed. But there was a lot of Chickasaws who were able to purchase supplies along the way because they had to do this because the federal government was not keeping their promises in providing those rations and those ration stations along the removal routes. Or if they were, those ration stations or the rations at those stations were tainted, they were spoiled, they were rotten. And so, Chickasaws, again, they worked to do everything that they could to ensure that all of their people who were on the removal route made it safely to Indian Territory. Many Southeastern Indians died by contracting diseases, starvation, or exposure to the cold, and were not allowed to prepare proper burials. Here on the screen is a picture of Chickasaw removal by a Chickasaw artist named Tom Phillips. And this is an image that really speaks volume to that Chickasaw perseverance and that Chickasaw will to not only again provide for our people, but also to show the most respect even during times of death. So, as I mentioned, the tribes that came before Chickasaws during removal, they were not able to stop and properly bury their loved ones. But this is a picture here, and it's documented that Chickasaw leaders in the group of Chickasaw family, they adamantly worked and advocated that they must stop and properly offer their condolences and respect and proper burial for a loved one that passed away. So when you look at this picture, it's obviously of a burial, but it goes to show that this was not common. And so our Chickasaw ancestors actively worked to ensure that respect was still being done even during some of the most challenging of times. So our Chickasaw ancestors, they traveled hundreds of miles. It's more than 500 plus miles from even just Tupelo, Mississippi into Oklahoma. So just imagine having to travel either by horseback or by wagon, and some also travel by steamboat all the way from the southeast over into Indian Territory. Now, I said steamboat, but it was reported that there was a group of Muskogee people who unfortunately died on a steamboat that exploded. And so our Chickasaw people heard of this, again, because we were one of the last tribes to be removed. So they heard of this and said, this is not going to happen to our people, or we're going to do all that we can to ensure that it doesn't happen. So there wasn't too many people or Chickasaws who removed on steamboat because they didn't want to see that happen to their own. So because of that, they traveled by foot, by horseback, or by wagon. There are some snapshots on the screen here from one of the most recently released documentaries. It's called Chickasaw Removal Part 1, and it's available on chickasaw.tv. By chance, has anyone seen this documentary yet? a few of you guys, I would encourage you, go to chickasaw.tv, and there are a plethora of documentaries and films and videos there that really continue to showcase and highlight the Chickasaw history, the Chickasaw story. And I had the opportunity to work on set with this documentary to ensure that the clothing was accurate, the background scenes was accurate, the information that was being shared on screen was accurate. So I have an amazing job, and I get to work with a wide variety of people who are also just as passionate about our history. So, resiliency and determination. Our Chickasaw people, again, removal began in 1837, majority of it ended by 1839, but waves of Chickasaw groups continued to arrive. So over the next 20 years, our Chickasaw people, our Chickasaw leaders, and our government, we began to rebuild. You know, it's not something for us to just sit around and wait for the federal government, for anyone else to do it for us. It's best that we provide for our own. And we see that still to this day. So our Chickasaw leaders and communities, we work to rebuild. We rebuilt those same schools, those communities, those businesses in Indian Territory. So we talked about stands or inns in the Southeast. I don't think I mentioned ferries, but there were ferries that Chickasaws operated in the Southeast. And we brought that same business model into Indian Territory, and there were ferries that our Chickasaw people operated that would cross you from Texas into Indian Territory over the Red River, and it's called the Colbert Crossing or Colbert Ferry. So there are many instances of where we're able to look back in our history and see that that same ingenuity, that same entrepreneurial spirit, it traveled with us. By 1855, well, let me back up. 1837, we purchased that interest in land from the Choctaws. So from 1837 to 1855, we were a district within the Choctaw Nation. So what this meant is that we still were obviously our own separate nation, but our tribal government was bound by the rules and regulations of the Choctaw Nation. So we still had a seat on our tribal government, but it was underrepresented. And so because of that, there were instances where our people were not able to voice their greatest of concerns because they were outvoted. And so, you know, again, going back to what it means to be Chickasaw, and that Chickasaw leadership, our leaders actively worked to ensure that we were able to regain our full rights back. So in 1855, we worked with the federal government and the Choctaw Nation, and we signed a treaty. So that treaty is known as the Treaty with the U.S., Chickasaw, and Choctaw of 1855, or the Separation Treaty. So that, what that did was our tribal government was now no longer bound by the Choctaw Nation, and so that district that we were in now becomes the Chickasaw Nation of what we know it today in Indian Territory. So the districts that Beth was mentioning, those are the same districts that were formed from that 1855 treaty. So, or in 1856, that's where we see our Chickasaw Constitution. So the district, that land base that our district was in, so we were a district within Choctaw Nation, that district now becomes our land base in Indian Territory. And so that district is then broken down into 4 districts. So it's a lot to remember too. So again, it's just so pretty impressive to see time and time again how Chickasaw leadership and that Chickasaw resiliency just continues to just like, it's like automatic when they notice that something is not right or something is not in the best interest of the Chickasaw people, that sensor just pops on and we see it time and time again. So in 1855, we signed the treaty. 1856, we signed the Constitution. So there on the map here, you see that where it says Chickasaw and Choctaw, so from 1837 to 1855, that was Chickasaw and Choctaw territory. Now we were a district within the Choctaw Nation. So in 1855, that district becomes solely the Chickasaw Nation. Let's take a moment here to look at the other tribal land bases. And I hate that you guys can't see that top right corner, but it says tribes such as Seneca, Cayuga, Wyandotte, Miami, Ottawa. So these are parts of those 39 tribes that I mentioned. So these are tribes that were not from around here. There's maybe 3 or 4 tribes that were originally from Indian Territory, but roughly 35 tribes that were not from here. Seneca, Cayuga, does anyone know where the Seneca, Cayuga, there are 2 separate tribes, but anyone know where they originally were from?
Upstate New York.
Upstate New York, yes. So could you imagine, let's just take a minute there. Can you imagine a group of people having to be removed from upstate New York and travel all the way from New York to Indian Territory, and their land base being reduced to that size of land up there? It's heartbreaking. One other, let's go with there's a tribe from California. I don't think I can see it up there. What tribe is it? Oh, sorry, I don't remember. There's a tribe in Oklahoma today that's originally from California. And so just again, imagine being forced to remove all the way from California over here. It's heartbreaking, but the tribes, similarly to the Chickasaws, all the other tribes, they are resilient in their own unique ways, and they've bounced back, and they are, again, providing for their people. Okay. But even before the Treaty of 1855 that separated us from the Choctaws and us creating our own separate constitution in 1856, our Chickasaw people actively worked to establish schools in Indian Territory that predated our separation treaty in 55 and our constitution. So we see, and I'm sorry that I don't have it up here, I should have put that up here. But there are boarding schools. There's Manual Labor Academy, Wapanaka Institute, Bloomfield Academy for Chickasaw females, Carter Seminary, so many different boarding schools that even predate 1855, 1856. So what does that tell you? It tells you that Chickasaws once again valued education, and they didn't wait around to sign a treaty or establish a constitution to ensure that the Chickasaws were being educated to the fullest to ensure that they could compete with their counterparts. So again, there were snippets of screenshots of Chickasaw removal. I encourage you again to go to chickasaw.tv. We also have student curriculum that also outlines and identifies that part of our history, both in elementary and secondary lesson plans. And those are available online by visiting chickasaw.net/curriculum. So with that, I'm going to segue over into our student curriculum. So since 2013, when I started working for the tribe, I have in some form or fashion been actively working with the team to ensure that we are creating student lesson material and resources so that students and educators have access to resources that promote and share and allow them the opportunity to learn more about Chickasaw history. So Chickasaw history such as Chickasaw removal, Chickasaw leaders in our homeland. We have another lesson called On Top of the World, Pearl Carter Scott. If you're not aware, one of the world's or United States youngest pilot was Chickasaw, Pearl Carter Scott. We have another lesson on Teyata and Montford, which I'll go in depth here shortly. And we also have lessons over Fort Washita. If you've ever been to Fort Washita, it's one of our historic sites. We have a lesson over tribal sovereignty and what that means. And what's unique about that lesson is that it's a 3rd grade lesson. So we're going back very early on, or early in one's early stages of development, to ensure that they know what tribal sovereignty is and how it relates to the Chickasaw people, to hopefully to their Chickasaw culture, because we're hopefully educating and providing these resources to Chickasaws, but also non-Chickasaws as well. Lastly, we even have a lesson over Carl Albert and the Chickasaw Nation. Has anyone ever heard of Carl Albert by chance? He's known as the Little Giant. He's from Bug Tussle, Oklahoma. I'm from McAllister, and Bug Tussle, where I live, is just right across the lake. So I'm very familiar with Bug Tussle. I lived in Reams, Oklahoma, So anyway, and again, kind of just taking a moment, when we think about Carl Albert, you may not think about the Chickasaw Nation, but if you dive in, you'll see that his jurisdiction, the people that he served, was parts of the Chickasaw and Choctaw Nations. So it's pretty impressive that you can look at even top leaders in United States history and you're able to connect back to Chickasaw Nation in some way. So anyway, so again, as I mentioned, we even have lessons over Teata. So who all in here watched Teata? Okay, so I really can just skip all these, right? But it was I do have a story. So I'm not going to repeat most of what you guys learned, but I will share a funny story. Did anybody notice that there was someone featured in that film? Well, there's two people. Yes. So the first one, of course, was Governor Anatubby. Who all saw Governor Anatubby there? I believe she asked him, where is a certain location? And he was like, it's up that way. So it's pretty cool to see Governor Anatubby in there. Then I also had an opportunity to be in the film. I don't know if you guys see me walk across the screen there. So it's pretty fun, but a funny story about that one is that, obviously, when you go on set, they're going to provide a wardrobe for you. Well, I was like, maybe I have something that will work. And so, but I had just gotten a new suit. And people used to always tell me that, Joe, you dress like an older individual. And so I never really believed it until when I got on set, I was like, do I need to change? And they looked at me and said, that'll work. And this is set during 1730s. And I was like, alrighty then. So they just gave me a hat, and then I went to step in and I walked across the screen. So it was pretty nice. But yes.
Speaking of wardrobe, I noticed that this plaque you have on your breastplate
Yes.
was the same as the warrior that we
Yes.
saw in Mexico.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Could you tell me what it is?
I sure can. So this is a gorget, and it is made of copper. So our Chickasaw people traditionally wore some form of gorget, but it wasn't made out of copper. It was usually made out of some type of, what is that material? Help me here. It's a natural material. Okay, it's pop quiz. It's, a clam usually stays in the shell. What's that called?
A pearl? Pearl.
No, just like shell. So not necessarily oyster, I don't think, but like mollusk, but more harder type of shell. But it's a shell material. So
Abalone, that's what I was thinking.
that sounds right. No, I don't even know how to say that word. What did you say?
Abalone.
Abalone? Okay, it sounded like you said bologna. No, it's some type of shell. I apologize. But so our ancestors were making some form of gorget out of shell, but when they started interacting with European traders and they saw that they were trading copper, our ancestors incorporated that form of material and started making their own form of gorgets. So we refer to it as gorget. You often may hear it referred to as a gorget as well. So, okay. So this film, it's a beautiful film. My goodness, I've seen it probably 20 plus times, and there are still parts of it where I was even getting a little misty-eyed. I was like, goodness, that's so profound. And the Chickasaws were able to secure top talent for that film. If you guys saw Gil and a few others, and Koryanka, I think that's how you say your name. It's pretty impressive, and it was released in 2016. And Chickasaw Nation continues to work on producing films that tell the story of who the Chickasaw people are and how they contribute to either the state of Oklahoma or the United States. And it's just a beautiful story. So well done. So we also have a lesson again that showcases her life and her contributions to storytelling and the arts. So the lesson plan is both for elementary and secondary students, and it does align with one or more Oklahoma academic standards for social studies. So here you can see just a few things. This is one of the activities, What's Your Story? And again, this activity aligns with a standard and one of the objectives. So next we'll talk about, and I know my time's probably getting short here, and I'm almost done. Montford, anyone familiar with Montford Johnson? Okay, well I won't go in depth too much here, I just encourage you to watch the film. So Montford Johnson was a famous cattleman from Indian Territory that really had a passion for other native people. Early on he was orphaned, and so that really stuck with him. He saw that, that there are certain families and people that have that great sense of love and passion in their hearts to adopt others. And so he carried that with him through his adult life. And he would often provide food and shelter and even work opportunities to people who were in need. So the Chickasaw Nation, once again, we produced a film, Montford, the Chickasaw Rancher. It used to be on, it premiered on Chickasaw, or not premiered, but it was on Netflix for a while, if you had a chance to see it. But now it's available on streaming platforms such as Peacock, Amazon Prime, and also available on DVD and Blu-ray. I also had an opportunity to be an extra in this film as well, so it's pretty cool. Like, it's pretty amazing how the Chickasaw Nation is not only promoting and sharing their stories, but they're getting Chickasaw people to help tell these stories too. And I just love that so much about our tribe. So again, we have another lesson that is dedicated to telling his story, and all these again are available on Chickasaw.net. Moving right along real quick, again, I had the opportunity to work with our student curriculum, and in 2023, we had the amazing opportunity to collaborate with Rhodes College, in Memphis, Tennessee. So we were able to go back into parts of our homeland and bring our student curriculum there. And so the Rhodes College, they opened their doors for us. And if you see the campus here, it's a beautiful campus. And we were able to, I brought 5 teachers with me, and we were able to teach about 5 lessons to elementary, middle school, and high school teachers who are wanting to use this material in their classroom. Now, we do have a lesson, and it's Chickasaw Leaders in the Historic Homeland, that does align with one or more social studies standards for Tennessee. So because of that, we know that they can, if they want to, incorporate that into their own lesson plan in their classroom. So we're super excited about that. So it's a great opportunity to collaborate with this institution, and they learned so much from us. They stated that, this provided hands-on, high-quality classroom learning experiences for educators, and it also provided them opportunity to see how the Chickasaw presence is there. So even if they can't see it, we know that it's there, but we can go back and we can show them that our presence is there. You know, when talking about Chickasaw removal, on July 4th, 1837, we ferried across the Mississippi River there in Memphis. Also, the Chickasaw Bluffs. So Chickasaw Bluffs are high bluffs that are there, but that territory, it was ceded in 1818 from the Chickasaw Nation to the federal government. In 1819, what city you think was founded? No, sorry, Memphis. Yes, so the land that we ceded became Memphis. So again, we're able to show those connections of that Chickasaw presence that many people may not be aware of, but we're able to go back and provide that information. And it's not us like trying to force our way into the doors, but they're opening the doors and saying, come in, help us relearn or learn this information so that we can share it with those who are here for future generations. So I'm just grateful for that opportunity. It's a beautiful campus. And again, we're able to re-engage and reestablish our presence in our homeland. So it's almost like a full circle moment, which it is when we talk about, lastly, the Chickasaw Heritage Center. So the Chickasaw Nation, the Chickasaw and Kana Foundation is building a new Chickasaw Heritage Center in our historic homeland in Tupelo, Mississippi. Founded in 2014, the Chickasaw and Kana Foundation preserves, protects, and interprets Chickasaw history and culture in the historic homeland. So So the Chickasaw Heritage Center campus is over 160 acres and adjacent to the Natchez Trace Parkway. So again, we're starting to see that full circle moment. Our Chickasaw people used to have businesses and homes along that Trace Parkway. And now here we are about to create and build, well, we're actually building, I'll show you some pictures. We're about to open the doors to a new heritage center that says, we were once here and we are back now. So it's amazing. I had the opportunity to tour it several times now, and every time I go, it's just more and more progress is being made. So groundbreaking was done on June 26, 2024. There are many tribal leaders, city leaders, state leaders, federal government leaders who are all there.
Do you see me?
Yes, Ms. Tribal Legislator Beth Alexander is there. She's right next to Lieutenant Governor Chris Antubby. And I'm in the back. You might think that's Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, but that's me back there. Chickastars, yes, that's us right there. So very exciting day. So here are a few, here's a rendering of what the Heritage Center will look like, and I'm going to read you exactly word for word what I have here. So it's going to be in 2 phases. Phase 1 will include a 10,000 square foot exhibit hall to interpret the rich history of the Chickasaw people from a uniquely Chickasaw perspective, an art gallery to showcase Chickasaw and other First American artists, a gift shop featuring Chickasaw art, jewelry, and literature, a multi-purpose room and catering kitchen. These areas, along with the lobby and plaza, will be available to rent for private events, helping the center generate supplementary income. The first phase will also contain collection storage and administrative offices. Phase 2 will include a cafe, theater, and reconstructed village. So here are some pictures of the progress thus far. Things are moving very, very nicely, and we are excited to state that the anticipated opening date is spring of 2027, so specifically around March-ish 2027, so a year from now. So hopefully a year from now, everyone in this room will take a nice trip over to Tupelo, Mississippi, and help open the doors on this amazing center. So today, we've explored the Chickasaw Nation, our history, in a unique way. We talked about who the Chickasaw Nation is, a little bit historically and contemporary. We talked about 2 influential Chickasaw leaders. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the film and the upcoming film. We learned about our student curriculum, learned about a dark period in our time, but we see that even some of the most darkest of times, that there's still a light at the end of the tunnel, and that is really, I think that's a great way to really end this presentation, is that through some of the most darkest of times, Chickasaws will find a way, Chickasaws will persevere, and as T.B. Thompson said, Chickasaws are still here, and Chickasaws are thriving. So, Yakoki. I don't know if we have any time for questions. I'm gonna give it back over to Lewis here.
You got questions?
When I was in Memphis, I sent pictures to Kay and Louis. We were up on the bluff, and we'd been up there before, but I saw the statue, and I was just so moved by the whole experience. It's not a huge space, but at the same time, just knowing what had happened there, and the statue was very moving to me too. So if you get to Memphis, find that place where it overlooks the river, and you can probably tell more than I can, but it's right there, and you can just imagine the people crossing there. It was just very moving.
And Jill
Yes.
has a great table and booth outside, and if you got other questions, be great for Jill.
Okay, you know what he's saying. He's saying, Phil, get off the stage.
make these candlesticks.
Polly, thank ye kindly, but you can keep these here. We won't be needing nice things like this in our new home.
Miss Lally, show your bill. They promise you a place just like you're leaving behind here in Mississippi. A place with good farmland and trees and green hills. A place just like what you're accustomed.
Yes, that's what they say. But no place in the western lands where they are sending us to could be like our home here, our little heaven on earth. This land has been a part of us for as far back as anyone can remember. I can't imagine being apart from all of this, our ancient tribal homeland where my ancestors' bones lay buried in the ground for so long. We're going to someplace alien to us.
Miss Lally, it sure don't seem right. Why should the government make you go? All this land's yours. Far as the eye can see. This house, it's nice, real nice. Why'd you have to leave this all behind? You're one of the most money people around, and your brother too. Got pretty clothes and people to work your fields. Take good care of us down in the slave quarters. Give us food and clothes. You don't beat us and you don't work us hard at all like the white masters do. All the other colored say we spoil. You and me, we're more like friends than misters and slaves. Miss Lally, why can't you just stay here and keep living life?
President Old Hickory is running out the Indians. The government here in Mississippi and in Washington says we gotta go so white people can invade us and take over. Look how they're already swarming in. Makes no difference to President Jackson that this has been our land forever. He's sending us away.
But Miss Lally, you're white folk. Look at you. You don't have Indian looking skin. Your skin's pale. Look at me. I'm dark as the Mississippi Delta bottom. No way I could pass for anything but colored. But you can tell people you're white folk and they never think a minute different.
Polly, how I'd long to stay behind. We hoped and we prayed for something different. There were so many treaties. My first husband, Sam Mitchell, went to Washington to work on one of them. Our leaders tried so hard. We put it off for as long as we could. Ours is one of the last wagon trains out. But I am Indian, Polly. My grandmother was a full-blood, Sofa Minta, queen of the Chickasaw Nation. Now she married a white trader, but her blood is still in my veins. It's a part of me that I can't turn my back on. I must go with my family, my brother's caravan, my daughter Catherine, and her husband Christopher, who's chalked up, and her boy, little Sam. We must find that place beyond the great waters that say awaits us. We must hope and pray for a brighter day.
Everyone here sure gonna miss you.
They'll have my gift to the people to remember me by. Land I gave them. 50 acres they can use to build a nice little town there.
Couldn't you just stay and be a part of it? I know you could. After all you've done for this place, they'd surely not turn their back on you. You'd blend into the woodwork. Eventually, you'd be one of them. They'd be saying, Delilah Love Mitchell Moore is fine and dandy.
Entreat me no more, Polly. It's impossible. The wagon pulls out tomorrow, and I'll be on it. It might make life easier, pretending I'm not. It might help with a heart beneath the ways I forgot. What I see leading down the road I'll be sure to sell you to someone who'll treat you kindly.
No, I goes with you, Miss Lally. Where you go, I'll be. I'll cross that great water with you and ride on your wagon west. I'll work for you the rest of my days.
Then you'll go with me as a free woman.
So the wagon train leaves the next morning and it crosses the Mississippi. And on its way to Little Rock, or the area that becomes Little Rock, it's struck by cholera. And about half the wagon train has to stay in the Little Rock area to recover. Catherine, Delilah's daughter, son-in-law, Christopher, and grandchildren, Luke and Sam, stay behind. Delilah goes on to Indian Territory in Oklahoma. They check in, and they're camped where Lake Texoma is now. And it floods, and she dies. And along in her wagon train, there were 168 people. Of those, 110 were enslaved people that belonged to different folks. She freed 10 of them before she left, and the rest of them should have been freed along the way. So the rest of the story, the family that stays in Little Rock, eventually Catherine goes on to Indian Territory, and she takes some of her children with her. But Sam grows up in Little Rock. He marries. He has 2 children, 2 sons, one named Thomas and one named Will. Then Sam dies, and his wife died when the boys are teenagers. And the sons, Thomas and Will, ride horseback to Indian Territory to find their grandmother, and they take up with their Uncle Luke. And Thomas was my grandfather. So it's a very personal story, and it's a very, I tell you now, we don't know all the dialogue. We don't know the specifics. But what we do know is this is a generalized way in what happened. And it was very much reflective of that era, as Joe did a great job describing, as people were being forced out of the homelands to the new territory. Okay, so we'll move on. Now I want to introduce our next speaker, Derek Ross. Derek is the Indigenous Scholar in Residence at Baylor University. Baylor's doing a great job, by the way, of coming to terms with its past and its history, racially and in every other way. And Derek represents the Wichita and affiliated tribes, where Baylor is situated. Waco was the home of those tribes. And they, of course, were removed and forced into Indian Territory in Oklahoma. And Derek is working on a project at Baylor's Mayborn Museum to recreate the grass house, the summer and the winter. and you've seen models of it out there in the lobby. So come on, Derek.
And Victor? Hello. Hopefully I can do this. I'm not too talented sometimes. My name is Derek Ross. In the Wichita language, it's Derek Ross Teddy Teddy Waikutatak Ashita Shitak. Derek Ross, Teddy Teddy, my name is. Waikutatak, I am Waco, so the Wichita tribe is Wichita, Waco, Tawakoni, Kichad. We're four tribes that the government put us together, but in general, we're one people, especially today, but even through the course of time, we are speaking the same language. So I think the land acknowledgement here is for Tawakoni and Wichita and affiliated tribes, and I'm not sure who all other than that. But I was going to say I really appreciate our Chickasaw friends and really everybody who's coming today. But and actually, if you're Native American, indigenous, there's some level of, you have to just not laugh, but there's humor in accepting some of the harsh realities of what happened in America. And so not to be offensive to anybody, but so we're one of the, as our Chickasaw brother shared, we're one of the tribes that's indigenous to Oklahoma. Southern Kansas, so if you see Wichita, Kansas, somewhere southern Kansas, the Kaw tribe and other people are north of that from where we are. And southern Kansas, a lot of Oklahoma, and then North Texas, from Waco to Wichita is what we say. And so I'm just going to say, personally, it's so hard because I wrote down while, is it Joe Thomas? Well, while Joe was speaking, there are overlapping stories. And so the story of removal for the Chickasaw people and the Choctaw people, and I have lots of Muskogee friends, all of their removal stories land in what is commonly called Indian territory. And so if you're Wichita, it's like, what? You know where I'm coming from? So for Wichita people, that it's not Indian territory, it's kind of our territory, and so, but we have to, as Native people, digest and experience all these stories that come together, and it's just the reality of America, the American story. And so I was going to say something funny. So the first American museum is in Oklahoma City, and if you haven't had the opportunity to go to FAM, it's a great, incredible, I think it's the premier Native American museum in the United States. And my aunt is the director of the Smithsonian Museum of the American Indian in Washington, D.C. Her name is Cynthia Chavez Lamar, and my uncle is Walter Lamar, and I'm going to show a video about him in a second. But while the Smithsonian is an incredible museum, I think I spoke with someone earlier who said that they actually just went to the Smithsonian National Museum of the American Indian in Washington, D.C., and so it's great. But there's still a filter on that Smithsonian that's somehow American to some small degree, where I think the FAM Museum in Oklahoma City is incredible because there's no filter. It's native. It's the Native American story of the 39 tribes that are now in what is Oklahoma today. And so if you haven't been there, you should go. Presently, we live in Waco, Texas, and I have a plan. If you're a praying kind of a person, pray for me because it's my role. I'm on the Cultural Preservation Board for the Wichita and affiliated tribes. I'm from Anadarko, but I really have a prayer, a passion, a vision to establish a history center in Waco, Texas for the tribe. We have a history center in Anadarko where our tribe is located today, but nobody goes to Anadarko. Nobody goes to Anadarko, you know. Does anybody know where Anadarko is? Nobody knows. Yeah, well, kind of. Yeah, a couple of the Chickasaw people probably. But in general, you know, it's kind of off the beaten path. And so where the federal government moved us around, they moved us around. We landed somewhere Anadarko, you know. That's where I was born, so I'm from Anadarko, Gracemont, Anadarko. But one of it's not a funny story, but it's just funny. So Gary McAdams was our president for 19 years, and he just passed away about 6 months ago or something like that. So he was a great man. He was the guy in our tribe who really had a master of our language and our culture and our heritage, and he just spent his whole life serving the tribe. I was in the Marine Corps. I was overseas for a long period of time of my life, different places. And then we were leading a nonprofit mission in the Philippines for the last 20 years, up until 2021. We came to the United States, my wife and I. She's out there at the table. But when we came to the United States, I asked Gary McAdams, so the Wichita and affiliated tribes had a federal lawsuit against the United States in the 1970s and 1980s, beginning of the 1980s, and we ended up settling a lawsuit with the government, and they paid us for 14 million acres, which is really a small part of what we were claiming, but they paid us for the land that was taken away from us at the time of the land that was taken away, the value of the land. And so all these overlapping stories of tribes, the federal government paid us for some portion of that land. And actually, even in the legal documents, they didn't say, this is where the land is. They didn't want to actually say that for the legal protection of the United States government to say, this is the land, you know. But at any rate, back to the price that the federal government paid. In 1986, I was just out of the Marine Corps. I was 21 years old. The tribe got about $14 million because they paid us $1 an acre for the land that was taken away from the tribe. So that's so sad in itself, you know. I talked to Gary McAdams, our former president, during that time. So when I came to America 2021, I really just started talking to Gary because I'm a writer. I wanted to write some articles. I really wanted to write an article about the value of what I was paid. Each individual tribal member received some portion of that money, and so it kind of amounted to about $10,000 per person. And so $10,000 for 14 million acres that was taken away is such a tragic crime, you know. But I wanted to write an article because I don't know what you were doing when you were 21 years old, but if someone gave you $10,000, you know, that's probably shouldn't be happening. You probably shouldn't give $10,000 to a 21-year-old guy just out of the Marine Corps, you know. So, you know, I bought a phone, I bought a used car, and in about 6 months the money was gone, you know. So I went to Gary McAdams, who's our cultural guy before, and I said, I want to start writing some articles because I want to impact the youth, the Wichita youth of today, because they need to know, you know, what was taken away from us, what we were paid, and what people did with it. Like me, it's really a confession of wasteful. You know, I personally, you know, wasted that money when in fact it should have been have so much more value than $10,000 to me. But I just didn't see the value. I was young, you know. So that set me on a journey, and then Gary McAdams said, it was 2021, so COVID is still kind of floating around, you know, and he said, would you go to Grapevine? They're having a dedication to a thing called the Peace Circle, and so would you speak for the tribe in Grapevine, Texas, which has led me to a great relationship with the Historical Society in Grapevine. One of our Wyandotte friends, Sally Andrews, is there. She's a great woman. But that led me on a journey to where I am now, and I never would have thought. I couldn't even imagine if you're Chickasaw or Wichita, to be able to represent your your tribe, it's just like, wow, this is so incredible. I don't know about you, Joe, but I feel when Gary McAdams said, would you speak for the tribe? I'm 61 now. This is, just a couple of 3 or 4 years ago, but I was overwhelmed with, oh no, I'm not worthy to speak for the tribe. Oh my goodness, no, I couldn't ever do that. I'm just nobody, I mean, I feel that way. But I did, and that led me to a variety of roles. I'm on a board at University of Texas Arlington for Native American Leadership, TCU, same thing, downtown Fort Worth Incorporated. The Dallas Museum of Art asked for some people who are indigenous to this space to weigh in on some land acknowledgement, those kind of things. And then that led me to an opportunity at Baylor University, and so now I'm the indigenous scholar at Baylor University, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. But I wanted to start with so I don't know anything about Chickasaw, but for Wichita, our language is oral. Derek Ross, City, my name is Wikutatsak, I am Waco, Ashita Shisak, how are you, So when we write our language, it's the International Phonetic Alphabet. And so unless you're a linguist, you can't even read it. You would never pronounce this the way it is unless you were a linguist. So it's such a hurdle, and there's so much that we need to do about our language. But if you look at this, to pronounce that IPA, it's Atskinsquatta. So I want you to say with me, Atskinsquatta. Guada. Atskinsquatta. Yeah, like something like that. Yeah, that's pretty close. But I always like to begin a talk with that phrase, because it doesn't just mean what time is it, It also means something like, it's about time, or this is the time. We can't keep moving on in time and not tell our stories. We can't, it cannot be that Wichita, Chickasaw, Kiowa, Caddo, Delaware, all these people, we have to start telling our stories, and people need to know who we are as Chickasaw, Wichita, Caddo, Kiowa, Delaware. We need to tell our stories, and so now's the time is another way you could say something like this, but I have a couple of things really. See if I can do this. So I said my name is Derek Ross. This is my tribe. This is a grass house, and so I'll tell more and have some pictures. I'm building a grass house for the museum at Baylor University, and then we're going to somewhere, Kansas, and we're building a grass house in our Kansas City. I'll tell some more about that. It's just south of Wichita a little bit. But this is a grass house that was built. It's sitting in front of the History Center for the Wichita and affiliated tribes in Anadarko, Oklahoma. But so I'm Derek Ross. So I was just gonna give some quick points. In 1541, so it's really cool to hear Joe talk about the Chickasaw and all these things that are happening in America, the tragic of their land being taken away and what they got for it and moving this direction. But if you think in your mind, 1492, what happened in 1492? The Indians discovered Columbus. So in 1492, so if you think about 1492 and then 1541, it's a short period of time. And so there's a great show on Netflix, it's called Gather. And it's really cool because I never really thought about it. The tribes that are on the eastern part of the United States, their story of the encounter of the federal government, the United States, it's different than the people who are Chickasaw and Choctaw. It's different than the people who are Wichita and so on and so forth, because the engagement of the U.S. government is happening at different times. And so everybody has a little different, it's the same kind of story, but it's kind of rolling out differently. And so there's so much to tell, and actually Joe did a great job in telling the Indian removal and the Indian code of offenses and all these things. and I didn't prepare for that, but there's so much to know about Native American people in that encounter. But just some bullet points. 1541 is where our tribe, somewhere near Kansas City, is first contacted by Coronado. The second point is 1601 in Oñate. There's a city that's why I'm going to build a grass house in Kansas, but the city is Etzanoa. So when they came to this city, there were grass houses, and I read the Spanish documents. This is so cool. I'm learning also a lot about my tribe and our history, but when I read these documents, they came to this city, and it was about 15 miles, and so I don't know what is 15 miles. I'm not from Garland, but how far is Mesquite? Is that 30 miles or? But can you imagine 15 miles? For 15 miles, there were grass houses that looked like this, about 200. It was a city of 20,000 people. So for about 10 or 11 years now, the archaeologists up in Kansas have been discovering this city. That's where we're going to build a grass house now. But so when they came to that city, the Spanish guys who were documenting all this said the grass houses went on for as far as your eye could see, is what they said. So it went on for 15 miles, but it was 40 or 50 grass houses in a space, and then about 200 paces there was a small community farm for those people in that community, and then another 50 houses, and then another 50 houses, and so on and so forth. For 15 miles there were just these communities, and it's interesting because I'm always trying to get a comparison to put something in perspective, and so I was trying to figure out when was Waco, Texas. So there's about 130,000 people in Waco, Texas today. But in the year 1900, there were 20,000 people in Waco, Texas. In the year 1900, there were 20,000 people in Waco, Texas. And so I think it's amazing that when the Spanish encountered the Wichita tribe in somewhere Kansas City area, somewhere up that way, there was a city of 20,000 people 300 years before Waco is 20,000 people. There was a city of Wichita people, 20,000 people, you know. I think that's so incredible. And so the derogatory terms and words and language that people use to describe Native American people in the United States is not nice, if that's okay. But we had governments and social services and education and care for people, you know, underground storage for food, you know, refrigerated, you know. And so the way Native American people are described in academia sometimes, you know, it's not nice, you know. And so it's so great to see this city of 20,000 people in Summer, Kansas, you know. And then actually if you go off to the northwest, there's another city today, it's called McPherson. So there was another 7,000 people that live somewhere there. And the challenge for Native Americans to some degree is, and I'm not sure what Chickasaw people know beyond, you know, the recorded knowledge that they have, but at some point we don't know, you know. And actually on that Netflix Gather program, there's at the beginning of the program, there's a woman and she's narrating the visual that you can see. It's this woman and a little girl, and then she's narrating the video that you're watching, and then she said, she's talking about the little girl, it's like her niece or her granddaughter, and she said on the narration, she doesn't know her language and it's not her fault. And it almost made me cry, if you're Wichita, you know, because there are 574 federally recognized tribes across the United States, and there are a great number of tribes, the majority probably, who are in great need of language revitalization, and it's really not the fault of the people, you know, because of what was happening in America. But to see this information that I'm learning, about this city, Etsanoa. It's so great. So this is my uncle, Walter Lamar, and his wife, Cynthia Chavez Lamar. So my uncle was an FBI agent. A little bit of what I'm talking about is people and family and impact in America and military service, just so people can see who we are as Wichita people, So my uncle Walter was an FBI agent for about 21 years, and he was located in Oklahoma City when the Murrow building was. Anybody remember Oklahoma City bombing? And so my uncle Walter Lamar, and if you watch the Oklahoma City 30-year Oklahoma City bombing documentary on Netflix, he's the one who caught Timothy McVeigh. And so there were two FBI agents located in the Oklahoma City office. And the boss of, on the documentary, you can watch it, the boss of my Uncle Walter is telling the story of when the bomb went off and what happened. And in 3 days, they caught Timothy McVeigh, and it was due to largely the knowledge that my uncle had. And you can see that on Netflix. And so even before I go any further, just right there, people in the United States probably aren't even aware that a Native American person is the person who caught Timothy McVeigh. That is so great. He wasn't in the military service, but he spent a lifetime in the police, in different places. And so that's my Uncle Walter. And then his wife, Cynthia Chavez Lamar, is the director of the Smithsonian Museum of the American Indian in Washington, D.C. for about 3 or 4 years now. She's the first female director of the Smithsonian National Museum of the American Indian. And then my Uncle Walter is now the chairman of the American Indian Arts and Crafts Board in Washington, D.C. under the Department of Interior. But I have a video, hopefully I can get this to play. It's about stories. Do we have the audio for that? I don't know if the person is back there. I was gonna. Oh, is it? Okay. Okay. I forgot to say, that video.
This is incredibly important for me, and for a whole number of reasons. But I go back to 10 years, 12 years ago. I was up on the Pine Ridge Reservation, and I was the deputy director for the Bureau of Indian Affairs Law Enforcement Program. And I was up there to talk about one of their officers that had lost his life in the line of duty. So the next day, it was my responsibility to talk to all the folks at we're going to be at the powwow grounds. So I went there that night, searching for some kind of inspiration. What is I going to say? What would I say? What would I say to these folks? And there was a lot of young people there as well. And I see this elder, and I decide I walk over and I want to talk to him, and I do, and I tell him who I am. And I said, tomorrow I'm going to be speaking here to everybody, and I'm going to be talking about the officer that lost his life in the line of duty, and I really don't know what to say. And he thought, and he pondered for a minute, and he looked back at me. He goes, he said, we have plenty of heroes from yesteryear. We have Chief Joseph, Chief Seattle, Sitting Bull, Crazy Horse. We have all of those leaders from days gone by, from yesteryear. He said, but our heroes today, who are those heroes? And it took me aback, because I thought as well, we're not telling our stories. We're not telling the stories that are all across Indian country, the most incredible, the most amazing stories of resiliency, stories of strength, stories of intellect, all of these stories that are out there, the warrior spirit and what we've overcome, and against all odds, trust me, we're still here despite all efforts to the contrary. And I thought about that, and I thought what he said, we have heroes every day all across Indian country, and as a board member on the National Native American Hall of Fame, I'm proud and honored to be able to say we're going to tell those stories. Those stories that have yet been told, we're going to tell. Those people that deserve the recognition that is offered by being inducted into this Hall of Fame, we're going to honor and recognize what those folks have done for Indian country, what they've done for us. And the most amazing part of it is those stories are interwoven and intertwined into the fabric of this country.
So, you know, when I listened to my Uncle Walter share that, you know, I'm going to be 62 in July, but when I watch these people, my dad and my stepmom and my Uncle Walter and different people, when I see other people, and I don't know how old you are or how you feel, but I feel like a child when I look at these people who are my elders, you know, older than me. I think that they're so great. These people are so great, and there's so much to do, and it's overwhelming sometimes because I think that you know, Anadarko is a little place, and for people to come out of Anadarko and go across the United States or come to, you know, somewhere like this place today and tell stories and educate people in Waco. I'm doing that. It's such a great need and responsibility. And so it's almost, it brings me to tears sometimes. But I put on here, you know, again, it's tongue-in-cheek and just kind of trying to be humorous. But I went to a prayer breakfast in Waco about 4 years ago, and it's a bunch of people from Waco, you know, in general, as a general statement, Anglo people, you know. So I sat across from this super nice man, and I said, "Are you from Waco?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm fourth generation Wacoan." The way he said it was so proud, which is deservedly, you know. He was proud to say, "I'm from Waco, 4 generations," you know. I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." And I was thinking, it made me think about that. I was thinking, I never really said to anybody, you know. And actually, this is going to sound kind of funny, but I was in the Marine Corps, you know. It's hard to explain being Wichita to other people that are not familiar with Native American, all those kind of things. So being Wichita, I am Wichita because I'm Wichita, but being Wichita, how does that manifested in my life? It's been limited over the course of my life. You know, I grew up in Anadarko and all that, but having an opportunity to be Wichita like I am today at Baylor and the things that I'm doing, building a grass house and all this, you know, I'm on the Cultural Preservation Board for the tribe. In a different way, I have an opportunity to be Wichita. And so when this person said, "I'm fourth generation Wacoan," you know, proudly, you know, I'm not being derogatory, I'm just being perspective, you know. And so when that person said fourth generation Wacoan, I was thinking, and I'll tell some more stories in a little bit, but I was doing the math, I was thinking, fourth generation, what would that be? You know, this guy's like, I'm 61, that guy's like 72, you know. So he was born in what year, you know, and then what year was that person born, and what year was that person born. And that's kind of coincides with the removal. So the Waco part of the Wichita tribe was removed from Waco in August of 1859. That's my personal family. I'll show some pictures in a minute. But it made me reflect. I was thinking, you know, perspective is everything, you know. Not to say if you're from Garland, 4 generations or whatever, you know, there's a bigger perspective, you know, in the course of time. It's a lot larger than 4 generations. And so I think it would be valuable for all people to just consider, what does that mean in the larger scope of the world around us, you know, time, like back to Atskin-Squatta, what time is it, you know? How does that affect these stories and all that? But so meeting new people, and I constantly meet new people, and there's some things that I have to be strong in my heart. There's a lot of information that people are repeating in Waco for a long time, since the early 1900s. This false information. It's just that not intentionally, but somehow people are sharing the same stories over and over again. It's wrong information. I don't even want to say it, but there are two words that people say when they meet me. Oh, you're Wichita, you're from the Waco tribe? And then they say one of two words, which are words that someone created in the year 1902 that is a mispronunciation of the word Waco. So it's actually Waco. So that's when I say Wikutatsak, I am Waco, And so so the work that we have to do in Waco is big, or Dallas Fort Worth, or somewhere Oklahoma or southern Kansas. So there's so much work to do. So this is interesting. So we have 5 companies. We have a company called Quivira. It's the holding company. So then we have Southwind Construction at Tinker Air Force Base, Escani, Wichita Government Solutions, Wichita Tribal Enterprises, and Anadarko Industries. We have a business at NASA for about 32 years. So this little boy on the far left is my dad. He's 83 years old now, so he pretty much sits on the couch every day watching Oklahoma City Thunder and whatever else is on the sports. But that's my dad, the little boy there on the bottom. And then the woman right next to him, he's hiding behind her skirt. That's my grandma, Maureen. So my dad's name is James Ross, James Warden Ross. But he is the founding chairperson for the Wichita and Affiliated Tribes Industrial Development Commission in the 1980s, I think. And so I did this for our tribal enterprises, our businesses. I said, look at that little boy. When you look at a little Wichita boy like this, you're not thinking that guy's going to be the founding chairperson for the businesses that the tribe has, or this is what he did, or this was his life. You're just looking at, oh, a little Chickasaw boy, a Kiowa boy, a Caddo boy, a Wichita boy, So you never know what this boy is going to become, And actually, I asked my dad. I said, and I'll tell more of this later. But I said, so where did my dad told me that Waukets? So the woman in the middle is Waukets. So she was born in 1870 something. She's the grandmother of my grandmother, and so she didn't really speak English, that much. But Waukets. When my grandma went to Riverside Indian boarding school, it's an Indian boarding school in Anadarko, they said you can't speak Wichita. So my grandma was born in 1919. I don't know if Joe covered this, but Native American people weren't citizens of the United States in the year 1919. It wasn't until 1924 when Standing Bear, the trial of Standing Bear, which is the grandfather of my stepmom, she's Ponca. So this woman in the center, in the front, she said, no, Laureen, my grandma, can't go to this school if she can't speak Wichita, which is, thank God, because that's how I know Wichita today from my grandma, And so, but when you look at this little boy, you're not thinking of what could this boy become. I asked my dad, I said, wait a minute, if grandma didn't go to a school, where did she get her education? Because I thought she was an amazing woman. She was a great woman. She was part of the allotment, so she had 300 acres at a farm. She managed her money well. She was helping other people always. Not everybody is always wise with their money. My grandma was a great woman. I asked my dad. I said, where did Grandma go to school? And if she didn't go to Riverside, and my dad said she was homeschooled. I thought that was funny because we have 5 kids. My wife's out there in the lobby. She did most of the homeschooling, but it's a partnership. But thinking about my grandma didn't actually do homeschooling. She just was schooled at home, And so that's my grandma and her sister and one of her cousins, who is also in our tribe, like a sister, But that's my dad, and so I'll come back to him in a minute. So this is my grandfather on the left. His name is Milo Ross, and the man on the other side is the Commander-in-Chief, United Nations Far East Command, General L. Lemnitzer. And so my grandpa was in the Army for 30 years. His parents, and the parents before them were part of the removal from Waco, you know. So it's really crazy to me to think, wait a minute, we were not citizens of the United States when my grandpa was born in 1919. He was also born in 1919. And his grandparents were part of that removal from that part of Texas to somewhere Anadarko, you know. To serve the government that took everything and did the things that happened to Native people, you know, to see a lifetime of military service to the United States government, you know. And I have postcards from all over the world where my grandpa was the assistant to the general all over the world. So I have postcards that my grandpa sent to my dad. My dad's name is, they call him Bunny Ross, but in Wichita it's Kukisukits, Little Rabbit. So Walkits, the woman who you saw earlier, named my dad Wichita name, and all of our kids have Wichita names, you know. But yeah, so my grandpa was all over the world with General Lemnitzer, and so I have some postcards from Thailand and Vietnam and Hong Kong, where he's writing to his son, who's a little boy, you know, at that time. And also, if you're part of a military family, the military commitment for a man or a woman is, to some degree, takes a lot away from a family, because especially if you're overseas like that. So the amount of time that my dad got to spend with his father was limited, you know. And so General Lemnitzer, after the World War II was over, went on to be in the president's cabinet for President Kennedy, and so you can read about him if you have interest in that. But I think it's really great that my grandpa was a Wichita man who was serving the general all over the world, you know, impacting the United States, like my Uncle Walter, you know, caught Timothy McVeigh. But people aren't really thinking about Native American people impacting in the United States and in the American story, you know. So that's my grandpa Milo. And then my dad was a Russian linguist, so my dad went to the University of Oklahoma, and you know, somehow was scored real high on the ASVAB test when he joined the military, and they sent him to Monterey, California. This is the year before I was born, and he went to the language school in Monterey, and somehow they said we need. You got scored so high that you should be learning Russian. So in a very short period of time, he learned Russian. And it's kind of funny, I was watching TV one morning and drinking coffee at my dad's house in Oklahoma City. He lives in War Acres. And my dad walks in, and when he walks into the living room, I said, "Buenos dias." And then in 2 seconds, he said, "Dobre utra." And I said, "What is that?" He said, "Good morning." I said, "And what?" He said, "Russian." I was like, "Oh, okay." And so since that time, I've been at a variety of places. I'm working with SIL, Summer Institute of Linguistics, and some people, Muskogee, Seminole, Wichita Baptist Association up in somewhere Henrietta, up there that way. And I'm going around with these SIL guys, and I'm meeting some other linguist people. And so I've been in a couple of situations where I was in two different situations where I was with two different people. My dad's 83 years old, you know. This was back when he was like 21 or something, you know, 22, 23. We lived in Germany. And so the person says that I'm with, you know, yeah, I was from Siberia, I speak Russian, you know. I was like, "You speak Russian?" I said, "Can I call my dad?" And so in two instances, I got my dad on the phone, and then my dad just starts talking to these people in Russian. You know, he's like 83 years old now, and he's still speaks Russian. I think that's so crazy, you know. But he served the United States government in the U.S. Army, and then went on to spend 29 years with the Department of Defense at Tinker Air Force Base. And I think he was the president of the intertribal group of people at Tinker Air Force Base for like 10 or 15 years, a very long time, you know, in leadership. And so when I look at my dad's resume, and when I look at my grandpa, when I look at my uncle, when I look at these other people, I think, wow, I'm so small. There's no way I could even spend, even if I worked really hard the rest of my life, how could I have an impact on my tribe and the world around me? And actually at this point, I kind of have made a commitment. I'm going to spend, if I get to live another 20 years, you know, then I'll be my dad's age, and I'll be watching Oklahoma City Thunder on the couch, you know. But whatever I can do now, you know, over the next 20 years, I'm going to try to do those things. But yeah, so this is my dad and my grandpa, you know, and so, yeah. And so that's a little blurry, but that's me. I was in the Marine Corps, and so I'm the black sheep, you know. My dad was in the Army, and his dad's in the Army. But, you know, when I was growing up in my grandma's house, the woman I showed you a while ago, you know, in Lawton, my grandma had a house in Lawton. So on the wall over here, almost everybody in my family was in the military, Army, Navy, no Air Force. But and at the end of the hall, my Uncle Ernie was in the Marine Corps in Vietnam, and his picture was on the end of the hallway. And when I looked at, as a little kid, you know, looking at my uncle's uniform, the Marine Corps uniform was so incredible, I thought. And so when I had the opportunity to join the military, I chose the Marine Corps because I was like, you know, wow, look at that uniform, you know. Little did I know it was going to be really hard, you know. I thought, you know, no wonder they, you know, they get rid of everybody. Everybody who can't make it, you know, that's how you get the uniform, you know, you have to work hard, you know. But that's me in the military, and so it's just another picture of, there's 3 generations of military service. I didn't, you know, I had 6 years total in the Marine Corps, but, and my dad was in the Army and then Department of Defense, and my grandpa was 30 years. But there's such a, to me, there's such a great story, because why would you do that, you know? How does that happen, you know? And at the First American Museum in Oklahoma City, they have a section on warriors. And so it's not just talking about people who are in military service, but the warrior term is a little broader, like women, you know, way back, or men and women today. Who are these people who are warrioring, you know? Like the work that I'm doing now, it's warrior work, you know, it's work that's representing our nation, fighting for our culture, our language, our history, our heritage. That's warrior type work according to FAM, and I really adopted that thought. And so on the 21st of this month, March, at the Irving Archives Museum, I think it's like a 3-month exhibit, and I'm participating in. There are 2 Cherokee veterans and then 2 Wichitas. The president of our tribe, Amber Silverhorn Wolf, was in the Army, and I was in the Marine Corps, and so we both have written, all 4 of these people have stories that are written and will be displayed at the Irving Archives Museum, along with some other these kind of things that I'm sharing with you, pictures of my grandpa, and you know, even the postcards are going to be on display there. But so you can serve your nation, the United States, and actually I'm proud to be American, you know, absolutely, completely. But I'm also, it's a dual citizenship, you know. I'm also proud to be Wichita, you know. I'm so proud to be Wichita, you know. And so, but the warrior kind of work that Joe's doing, and people who serve their tribe in any fashion, you know, language, you know, that's such a great need. That's warrior work, I think, today. So I just put another timeline thing on here. 1541 is the first encounter Coronado. 1601 is Oñate. That's the Etzanoa city of 20,000 people, you know. 1859 is the Waco part of the tribe removal from Texas. But we were also down in San Marcos. We have grass houses as far as San Marcos, Waco, Hillsboro, up in this area, Dallas, Fort Worth, Grapevine, all that. The Wichita people were in this space also. In 2021, we were in the Philippines for 20 years, about 20 years, leading a mission. And so in 2021, we came back to America because of COVID, and we thought we were just going to go back to the Philippines, but somehow God changed all those plans. But in the process of coming back, we bank at Wells Fargo, and so I went by Wells Fargo in Waco, Texas, and so the young woman, I was at the drive-thru, and the young woman who's at the glass window, and all that, she says, okay, thank you, Mr. Ross. Is there anything else I can do? I said, no, that's it. I'm just trying to, get my banking in order. We're just got to Waco. We've been living abroad. And she said, oh, where are you from? And I said, well, I'm actually my family is from Waco a long time ago. And she goes, oh, when were they from Waco? And I said, in the 1850s, before anybody got here, and she said, oh, what is that? And I said, well, I'm from the Waco part of the Wichita and affiliated tribes. And she said, welcome back. And I thought that was so incredible. And so I've been telling that story ever since 2021, because the girl said something, I told my dad, and he's like, that's so neat, because why would someone say that? That is so nice, welcome back, and so that's just another timeline. Atskin Squad, what time is it? So I think this is I think it's an interesting exercise. So if you look at this, you would never be able to pronounce that. Atstis Nasa Atzakwakar, we're glad that you came. That's Wichita. So I'm not going to ask you to say that. But I was going to try to do this. So we're going to sing a song. Hopefully you can still hear me, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to sing a song. I'm going to teach you a song. Maybe you can handle that. So I'm going to say something, and then you're going to repeat it. Got it? You say, got it.
Got it.
Niwa, niwa, stawa, stawa, wanits, wanits, oka, oka, nada, nada, yase, yase, hi ho, hi ho, wakwi, wakwi, she, nagits, nagits, gadi, gadi, Idaho, Idaho, Dante, Dante, Ikea, Ikea. That's Amazing Grace. And so a Muskogee man left somewhere in Henrietta, Texas, the eastern part of Oklahoma, and rode a horse 200 miles. There was a association of Baptist Indians in that part of Oklahoma. It was the Muskogee Seminole Baptist Association. And this man rode a horse 200 miles in 1874 to Anadarko, Oklahoma. And they planted a church among the Wichita people. And so today, the association is Muskogee Seminole Wichita Baptist Association. We really only have one church at all, but there are lots of Muskogee churches and then also Seminole churches in somewhere Oklahoma on the other side of where the Chickasaws were, over that way. And so that's a song that I learned when my dad was a child. They're preaching in Wichita, our language. In Waukits, this woman was translating in other languages for different people. And by the time I was a young person in 1974, the church was 100 years old in 1974, and I was about 10 years old at that point. And at that point, and until now, they're still singing songs in Chickasaw, Choctaw. There are multi tribes that people come, and for Native American churches, someone will show up and someone will lead a song in their language, even though it's a Wichita, kind of Wichita church historically. There are people in our church who are Pawnee, different tribes. So, everyone say gaheets. That's salt. Hiquats, tomato. Hiquats. Gawada. That's horse. Wakats. That's cow. Wiu. Cat. Gitsiad. That's dog. My dad's name, Gukish Sokits. Gukish. Rabbit. Hidaka. Far away. And actually, if you're Wichita, back in the day, when I was a little kid, if you're Wichita, you would have not like Spanglish, but they would say, I would say, Grandma, where's Tulsa? She would say, way Hidaka. So it's like what she's using the word way, like far away, and then saying the Wichita word Hidaka, far away, way Hidaka, like that. And so Ches, Wets, Dow, Dockwitz, Iskiddywash. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's Wichita, And so we're so far from the Chickasaw people in regards to language. We have a very limited number of people that know much Wichita at all. I had the benefit of growing up with my grandma, and then when I got out of the Marine Corps, I moved to Lawton and lived with my grandma for about a year, and just wrote down every day, asking her questions. How do you say this? How do you say the first question? You learn Wichita as a kid. Back in the day, you're just learning, like it's almost, let's see, like people say, your dad has a Wichita name, Kukisokits, Little Rabbit, and then your children, our children all have Wichita names, all 5 of our children. So someone will say, what's your Wichita name? And I'll say, well, for the longest time, I thought it was Hatto. Because every time I was my aunts, I'm in the house, I'm doing something, they would say, Hatto! Which means, don't do that, or stop it. I'm just joking, but that, I was like, that must be my name, because they're calling me that all the time. But so you're learning Wichita as a kid like that. That's a normal thing, you're learning, gotta go to the bathroom, there's a word for that, But when I got out of the Marine Corps and I moved to my grandma's house, I hope this is meaningful that I'm sharing. There are a lot of ways you could tell stories and things that people might want to hear, but I'm always thinking that being Wichita, hearing like, what does it mean to be Wichita? How does that feel, What are the stories? How do you see your family? So when I moved in with my grandma, I said I want to learn more Wichita. Whatever you want to ask. So the first question that I really proactively asked to learn was, how do you say I love you, Grandma? And so when I said that, if you're Wichita, being prideful is not like a thing, you try not to be prideful. So for her to teach me, something that raises her up, how do I say I love you, Grandma? She was like kind of shy and she didn't want to say it. I said, I just want to know how do I say I love you, Grandma? And so she said, Dadada Okash, I love you. Dadada Okash, Aka. It's grandparent, it's not grandma, grandpa, it's just grandparent. Dadada Okash, Aka. So that was my time with my Dadada Okash. I love you. Aka, grandma, grandparent. Dadada Okash, Aka. I love you, Grandma. So I'll try to go through these. It's just a bunch of pictures, but we're building a grass house. This is my Uncle Gerald Miller. So he built a grass house for the city of Wichita, Kansas in the 1970s. So he's been building grass houses. He's the gentleman to my right there. That's my Uncle Gerald Miller. And then his uncle, Frank Miller, was also part of the church that I grew up in at Rock Springs Indian Baptist Church in Anadarko. But his uncle was the man who taught him how to build grass houses, and now he's teaching me. And then my son is also, both of my sons are learning how to build grass houses at the Baylor University grass house. So that's my wife on the far right, and then this is a volunteer, and then that's me on the left. I got my Indian Falls Creek. Does anybody know Indian Falls Creek? So that's my Indian Falls Creek. I went there as a kid. But that's the grass. This is a little blue stem grass grows in all throughout Kansas, Oklahoma. It's growing wild on the side of the roads. There are different kinds of grasses that do grow along the highways, 35 or whatever. But a lot of it is little blue stem grass. There's also a big blue stem grass, and then there's switchgrass. You can also use that. But the Texas Land Conservancy gave us access to a big piece of property that has this growing wild that they're conserving. Same thing up in Kansas. We're partnering with the Kansas Land Trust up in Kansas to build the grass house up there. But this is the grass. That's my Uncle Gerald, and this is a Toyota commercial. No, I'm just kidding. That's my truck over there. But that's me. And this is my cousin on the far left here, Teresa Sudel. That's a Kiowa name, her former husband. But Teresa's about to apply for the PhD program. If you're a person who prays, we're trying to meet with the president of Baylor they made a land acknowledgement. In the land acknowledgement, they made a statement that they were going to lean into education partnerships, which means scholarships so she's got a master's in environmental science, and so she's applying for the PhD program, but she'll be, and she also helped us with the grass collection and the cedar and all those things like that. But that's my Uncle Gerald and the grass in his hands. And then this is my son off to the right here, and that's me. So when you harvest the grass, you're cutting it at the base, and you leave it so that it grows back and there's more grass down the road. But then you have to kind of clean it, and then you're taking this grass and putting it on a trailer, and then we took it to Baylor, and it was in stores. They kind of bug bombed it because it has to go into the museum building. And then this is the space that they're in the middle of a $10 million renovation. That they're having an early American, like a log cabin, and then a Black American gospel, something or other. There's a room. So it's the story. It's a multicultural story, not just Wichita. And then the Comanche tribe has a teepee, and there's a couple of buffaloes. But this is the spot that they chose, and then they renovated the whole building to set it up so we could build a grass house right there. These are the poles that we harvested at Gracemont, and then we split them, and then my sons took the bark off all these cedar poles. That's my Uncle Gerald. Then normally this would go in the ground, so those big poles on the ground there go up like that, and then there's a cross member. So Caddo people also have a grass house, but it's actually very different. There's no frame on the inside, and then there's the decorations for the exterior of the grass house is different. But so since we're not burying the poles in the ground, we had to fabricate some boots that these things sit in. And so that's what it looks like a couple of 2-3 weeks ago. And you can see the inner frame, and then these outer frame. It's 22 feet in diameter. It's about 25 feet to the ceiling, and so there's an inner frame in there, and these long poles just kind of bend over that. And then you can see we started the grass. So the going horizontally, that's willow that also is skinned. You have to take the skin off the cedar and also the willows. And then the grass fits in there. It's kind of clamped in there with the rawhide and the willows, two sets of willows. And so that's me and my son. And then this is the back side. So this over to the left where there's some caution tape, that's the way you go in there. So you'll be able to actually walk into the grass house. From this side, you'll see the frame, and from the other side, you'll see nothing but grass. But they wanted to expose it so you could see how it's made, you know. So we did that, and that's a couple of days ago, day before yesterday. I took this picture where we're almost to the top. So the grass kind of stops where the white line on the wall is over there, and you can only see the frame from the other side. And same thing this way going around to where this blue wall is on the left. The grass goes up, and then there's a door right there. I don't know if you can see it in the center at the bottom. It's made out of grass. Is that interesting to you? I don't know. It's exciting for me.
Question, is it sealed with anything?
What's on the inside?
Is it sealed?
Sealed.
Sealed.
I'm deaf.
Waterproofed or? Yes.
Well, it doesn't rain inside the building, so I don't think that's a problem. No, it's kidding. No, actually, so the grass house in Anadarko at the History Center, it's kind of tattered. It's been there about 11 years, but it's waterproof because of the way it's engineered. And so just ingenuity of native ingenuity, you know. So, and actually, if it's 110 up in Anadarko in the summertime, and you step into the grass house, it's kind of cool on the inside. Same thing in the wintertime, it's warmer inside the grass house than outside. And so it's just made, designed, engineered well, you know. And I just did the science, technology, engineering, arts, and math STEAM Center in Waco, Texas. I just did some of the translation. They put up a grass house, and they wanted to put something Wichita in there, and I said, why don't we put a grass house? That's engineering, you know. So so it just naturally sheds water because it's like a shingle, and just like the shingles on your house maybe are good for 15 years or 10 years, depending on the shingles you buy, and they have to be replaced or reshingled. Same thing on the grass house. The cedar and the willow probably last forever, but maybe after 10 or 15 years, you might have to take the grass off and regrass it, but it sheds water.
To keep the bugs, what did they use? Natural materials?
Bugs?
Natural, you said that to bring it inside.
Well, they tend to bug bomb it to bring it into the museum because there's other art, you know, or whatever.
Pine tar or some natural.
They just used like a bug bomb thing that we covered it with a plastic and a little smoke bomb, and they did that. And then they are gonna fire retardant, spray something on it at the museum, but it'll look wet the first couple of days, but then it'll dry and you won't even know. But I was just gonna say, Watkins was my grandma's grandma. Bertha Ross was the mother of my grandpa, the one who's in the military service. She was taken from her home in around the end of 1800s and forcibly put into Riverside Indian School. She was 9 years old. She didn't speak English. And then just a couple of years ago, they found a grave at Carlisle Indian School in Pennsylvania, and they brought this young woman. She was 15 years old when she was taken from somewhere in Anadarko to Carlisle Indian School, and then she died within 3 years. And so there's numerous stories of Native American people, especially women, who mysteriously died, you know, at a young age, and so that has a backstory too. My work at Baylor is in a variety of things. From a Native American perspective, when you think about political science, government, or almost any topic, our story might be different than academia would just tell, you know. So those are the things that I do at Baylor. And again, that's my grandma and my dad. Thank you. Sue Dietz. Everybody say Sue Dietz. Thank you.
I wish we weren't on a time limit, but they will kick us out at 4 o'clock. So we're gonna have to move along here. We're gonna do the five remaining baskets. So if you've got your ticket, get it out, look at it, and, okay, this is the collection of things that, books that we have produced, tapes we produced. We've done these programs now for, going on 7, 8 years. And we have tapes and books and all kinds of things that go with it. So, okay, 3, 4,